Hello, church, and welcome to the Midweek Message. I am so glad to be outside in the blue sky, and it's pretty warm out here. I'm hoping that spring has come for good and that we'll have good weather from here on out. You know, one of the distressing experiences that people are having during this time of the coronavirus and the shutdown is that we have lost a lot of the things that we used to distract us. We're spending a lot more time with our own thoughts and with our spouses and partners and families. You know, the virus has slowed our lives down, and I think that can be a bad thing, and I think it can be a really good thing too. You know, the experience of quietness and aloneness, it can be peaceful, but we can soon recognize that the noise that comes from inside us, when things get quiet, our thoughts and our insides can become really noisy, and we recognize that, oh, maybe they always were noisy and I was just distracted from them. We can realize how useful busyness and conversation and social engagements are in distracting us from ourselves. You know, the virus has upended life for us. It's an invisible thing. It's a small thing that takes up residence inside us, and this little thing has changed how we would like to live. Well, I think that this experience of living with the virus, maybe not in ourselves, but within society, that it has showed us how other invisible small things control us as well, and how those things keep us from recognizing and realizing and remembering who we truly are. The experience that we are having as we live with ourselves closely, maybe more closely than we've ever done before, is that we don't really know ourselves. James Thurber is an author, or was an author, I think he's dead now, really insightful, and he said that all people should strive to learn before they die what they're running from, and what they're running to, and why. So what I'm talking about here is self-knowledge. You remember a couple weeks ago when I spoke about Jesus as the Good Shepherd, I said that the sheep recognized two things. First, they recognized the shepherd's voice. But then the second thing they recognized was their own names when he spoke them. They had both the knowledge of God, an experiential knowledge of God, and they also knew themselves. They knew when God was speaking to them. Knowledge of ourselves and knowledge of God go hand in hand. In fact, I don't think you can really have one without the other. Even if people who aren't religious, this knowledge of spirituality or of divine connection and a knowledge of themselves, it goes hand in hand, because that's how we're made. We're made as people who are spiritual beings that are connected in ourselves, connected to the whole of the universe and all of creation. You know, as I've talked with some of you about living through this experience, you've shared about how you've become more aware of certain habits of behavior and certain habits of your thinking and automatic reactions that you have to things that set you off. You've recognized that you are set off by things, and you've begun to wonder why. You know, I think as the older we get, well, actually, maybe it's not older, maybe from the very beginning, that we are quite comfortable with the ways of reacting, with our habits. We're quite comfortable with that. I mean, we can go through days, through all of our days, kind of asleep to ourselves, not being really conscious, aware of why we're responding some way. We just do. I think this is part of what we would call a personality. We let our personalities, which are pretty well honed, we let our personalities do all the living for us. But someplace deeper within us, there's something you might call it, some people call it your essence. Maybe in the Christian church we would say it's the Spirit of God living in us. It's that thing that comes alive when the Spirit breathes, when God breathes the Spirit and breathes the life into us. We might also call it our true selves. That's what I have been calling it in sermons and for a few years. We know that there's this deeper thing, essence, Spirit of God, our true selves, that this is really longing to come out. But the habits, the anxieties, our protective reactions that we have, and all these things that we've learned them through the years, we've been conditioned to have them. All of these things, these constrict our real selves, our true selves. They constrict what's the full deal that God has created us to become. Ellen Bass writes this. She says, there is a part of every living thing that wants to become itself. There's a part of every living thing that wants to become itself. The tadpole into the frog, the chrysalis into the butterfly, a damaged human being into a whole one. She says, that is spirituality. So we may be damaged, we may be not damaged. I suppose we're all damaged or hurt in some way. I don't think we go through life without taking on hurts. But so whether we're damaged or not, I don't think it is the point. But I say that every one of us is only half awake to others, half awake to God, and half awake even to ourselves, wondering, why did I respond that way? Why do I react that way? Our personalities go on overdrive when we get stressed. So for me, during this time, I have struggled even more than I usually do with my penchant to overanalyze my experience, to overthink something, to want to get every single one of my ducks in a row kind of mentally before I take any kind of an action. I've also noticed that I do a lot more of almost a frenetic seeking of information in order to make a sense out of what's happening in life, what's happening within church, within the religious world, what's happening within myself. Just this frenetic seeking of more information. I have to know. I have to be sure of what's happening. And if any of you have asked me, and some of you have asked me the question, how are you doing, Garrett? I'll say, I'm doing okay. When I know that I'm not completely okay, I know that there's something else going on there. You're asking a deeper question. But I have a hard time sharing that. In my personality, that's all part of how I react to stress. And then, fortunately, having Mary and Sam around in close contact, that's actually been a helpful thing for me, because it pulls me out of what I think are the wonders of my thoughts, and it pulls me into the everyday wonders of life, into those relationships, into being with them and their needs and their desires and their thoughts and what they want to say. So this time of stress affects us. So that's the way some of the ways it affects me, and depending on personalities, it affects you in a different way. But it is affecting us, and it is causing us to maybe live more out of habitual reactions and responses, and less out of that deeper sense of essence and spirit of that true self, that true creation that God has created us to be. A wise spiritual teacher said that you can't change how you see the world. How you see the world that's your personality. And you can't change how you see the world. But you can choose what you do with what you see. And that is the deeper work of spirit. See, we're more than just our personalities. We're more than just saying, oh, you're like, well, that's the way I'm made. That's who I am. Take it or leave it. There is a deeper work of transformation that is always possible within us, and that God is always inviting us to take part of and to join Him in. So, noticing how you see the world and recognizing that others see it differently, that's part of the awareness needed to choose how to be in this world, in a faithful, loving, compassionate, truthful, wholehearted kind of way. The Enneagram, which I've spoken of many times, the Enneagram puts these observations that we have about ourselves. Sometimes they're flashes of insight, or sometimes they're just recognitions we have that we don't really know what to do with. The Enneagram and the wisdom within it puts these observations into a bigger spiritual context. So together, our awareness, our observations of ourselves, and then this wider wisdom of the Enneagram, these two are needed. These two are needed together to show us what transformation looked like. Together, these two things, self-awareness and the Enneagram's larger context of wisdom about humanity, these two things make for spiritual transformation that can be fertile ground for our relationships, for our discerning what action God is calling you to do, meaning that I'm living and I'm acting out of my true self, and also fertile ground for growing in love for yourself and for others. So I'm going to end our time here. I'm going to tell you about the Enneagram course that I'm going to be facilitating here in the near future. And then I want to end with a story of a locksmith. So the Enneagram Journey class is a course created by Suzanne Stabile. Suzanne is a master teacher about the Enneagram and the inner work around personality types. She is a deeply faithful, loving, compassionate Christian teacher. And she has taken the Enneagram and made it available in some really helpful ways to the church. So her teaching on the Enneagram is available to view online, and if you enroll in this in the course that I'm going to be facilitating, you'll be able to see that teaching online. So part of the course is online; you can view it at any time. And then a second and a key part, and really a crucial part of the course, is the community that we'll have with all the others who are on this journey together. And we'll do that via the Zoom app, at least while we're in distancing mode, which is probably going to be for a while. So we've got an online portion. We've got which can be done by yourself. And we've got a Zoom interactive part where we learn from one another about what other people's experiences are, and that helps us gain insight into our own experience and our own type, our own personality, and our own essence. And then with the enrollment in the course comes the participant's guide, which is a way for you to journal, a way for you to kind of keep track of a lot of the information that Suzanne will be presenting, and you can get that participant's guide when you enroll in the course. So you can enroll in the course by letting me know that you want to be a part of it. I have some of those guides from the packet I ordered. You can also get it straight from the Suzanne's online store. And the course it goes best when there's at least a dozen or so people involved, so that we can have a full spectrum of personality types to learn from and learn about. So this is great learning to do as spouses. I think Mary's going to take part in this as well, because our spouses are the primary relationship for many of us. Really close friends, adult children can also be fun and helpful to do this course with. And so if you could help do some recruiting for this course, I think the whole experience will be richer and fuller and more helpful for us. Well, I want to end with a story about transformation and about how that happens. This is kind of a parable of sorts. This comes from an Islamic tradition, the Sufi tradition within Islam. Sufi tradition is kind of the contemplatives and the mystics of Islam religion. And this is the story of the locksmith. Once there was a metalworker, a locksmith, who was unjustly accused of crimes and was sentenced to a deep, dark prison. After he had been there a while, his wife, who loved him very much, went to the king and beseeched him that she might at least give him a prayer rug, so that he could observe his 5 prayer times, his prostrations every day on his prayer rug. And the king considered that to be a lawful request, so he let the woman bring her husband a prayer rug. And the prisoner was thankful to get the rug from his wife, and every day he faithfully did his prostrations on the rug. Much later, the man escaped from prison. And when people asked him how he got out, he explained that after years of doing his prostrations and praying for deliverance from the prison, he began to see what was right in front of his nose. One day, he suddenly saw that his wife had woven into the prayer rug the pattern of the lock that imprisoned him. Once he realized this, and understood that all the information he needed to escape was already in his possession, he began to make friends with his guards. He also persuaded the guards that they all would have a better life if they cooperated and escaped the prison together. They agreed, since although they were guards, they realized that they were in prison too. They also wished to escape, but they had no means to do so. And so the locksmith and his guards decided on the following plan. They would bring him pieces of metal, and he would fashion useful items from them to sell in the marketplace. Together they would amass resources for their escape, and from the strongest piece of metal they could acquire, the locksmith would fashion a key. One night, when everything had been prepared, the locksmith and his guards unlocked the prison and walked out into the cool night where his beloved wife was waiting for him. He left the prayer rug behind, so that any other prisoner who was clever enough to read the pattern on the rug could also make his escape. and thus the locksmith was reunited with his loving wife. His former guards became his friends, and everyone lived in harmony. Love and skillfulness prevailed. This traditional Sufi teaching story can symbolize our study of the Enneagram. The lock is our personality. The prayer rug is the Enneagram, and the key is the work that we need to do. Note that although the wife brings the rug, in order to get the tools, the locksmith has to create something useful for his guards. He cannot get out alone, or for nothing. Furthermore, during the whole time he was praying for deliverance, the means of his liberation was literally right under his nose. Although he had never saw the pattern or understood its meaning, it was right there. One day, however, he woke up, saw the pattern, and then had the means to escape. The heart of the story is clear. Each of us is in prison. We have only to awaken, to read the pattern of the lock that will allow us to escape. Friends, may this time of disruption and this time of fewer distractions be a time in which you see the pattern of the lock before you, and that you join in a journey towards freedom and wholeness, towards your real self. Blessings on you, church.